At MSNBC.
British rule in Hong Kong came to a close. Hong Kong's future is now in China's hands. Prince Charles led the British contingent in the ceremonial handover, his Chinese counterpart being China's president, Jiang Zemin. As the historic ceremonies came to a close, Prince Charles and the former colonial governor of Hong Kong boarded the royal yacht, sailing back to Britain. For astronauts on board the Russian space station Mir, life is getting back to normal.
Goodbye to a territory gained.
This hour of programming is underwritten by the Classical Music Fund, whose contributors include the Trump Taj Mahal Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City and the State Theater in New Brunswick.
And now to that Rimsky-Korsakov, his Capriccio Espagnol in its unexpurgated entirety, as is usually performed. We will hear the CSR Symphony Orchestra of Bratislava under the direction of Keith Clark.
Anti-lock brakes, power package, air, and more.
Toyota's hot, hot, hot.
Call the fire trucks because this place is smoking. The hottest place to be is at Toyota now.
On World News Tonight this Monday, history made on a small piece of land in Asia. In Hong Kong, a century and a half of British rule comes to an end. and China takes over.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, reporting tonight from Hong Kong.
Good evening from China. Here in Hong Kong, where it is now Tuesday morning, 6.5 million people are just waking up in a Chinese city. The British have gone. It was an extraordinary last day of British rule, 156 years after the British Navy first came to this part of the Chinese coast. This most dynamic center in all of Asia has been returned to Chinese sovereignty. It was an incredibly dramatic day, made even more so by seeing the Chinese military in Hong Kong for the first time. At first light this morning, several thousand soldiers began crossing the frontier, arriving in the outskirts of Hong Kong. A strange sight for so many people here. It was a dramatic morning and evening because we saw the British in all their splendor here for the last time. In the final hours when Hong Kong was still British, it was very British. The 28th and final governor who pushed so hard for greater democracy reminded the new Chinese rulers of their agreement.
Now, Hong Kong people are to run Hong Kong. That is the promise, and that is the unshakable destiny.
And then the rain.
Done!
A torrential rain. But on this occasion, the likes of which the world will not see again, it seemed only to heighten the drama. Speaking for the British monarchy, which had ruled 800 million people only 50 years ago, the Prince of Wales.
The eyes of the world are on Hong Kong today. I wish you all a successful transition and a prosperous and peaceful future.
It had all the power and glory that once was empire. And then over Hong Kong's harbor there was a massive fireworks display. In the final moments of British rule, after months of the most detailed negotiation about how these ceremonies would be equally shared, the most powerful symbols of change.
His Excellency.
No leader of China has come to Hong Kong in 156 years. From China's point of view, the long history of shame and occupation was finally over. The Chinese president promised the world that Hong Kong would maintain a high degree of autonomy, that Hong Kong would be ruled by the people of Hong Kong. And then very quickly, almost in haste, it was over. Prince Charles and the last governor with his family went into the night on the royal yacht Britannia. It is said that before long, Britannia will be sold or scrapped. Like empire, it is too much to maintain on the eve of another century. In the brand new convention center, the Chinese premier, Li Peng, who helped to crush the pro-democracy movement in China, swore in Hong Kong's new chief executive. The Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, in the name of supporting democracy, did not attend. On the balcony of Hong Kong's Legislative Council, some of the most committed Hong Kong Democrats, who lost their seats in the legislature at the whim of China, held the first pro-democracy demonstration in the new Hong Kong. There had been weeks of speculation as to how China would react in these first moments of sovereignty. They did not interfere. The arrival of Chinese troops here in Hong Kong is particularly symbolic. They certainly express the new Chinese sovereignty, but they also represent a people's army that turned on the people some years ago when they demanded democracy. There will actually be a smaller Chinese contingent here than the British had. But this is China now, and the world is watching like a hawk to see how China behaves. Here's ABC's Jim Laurie.
Peter, it was a startling contrast. Chinese troops got an enormous send-off across the border in the town of Shenzhen, while in Hong Kong's new territories, the government organized smaller groups to provide a welcome. For in Hong Kong, this arrival has been a contentious issue. It was the sight that caused both apprehension and pride.
It's a demonstration of China's sovereignty over the territory.
That reflects the official view as well, a perfectly natural deployment, nothing to worry about. For others, though, it was too many troops too soon and too provocative.
People in Hong Kong are very afraid of that because it is a symbol of irrational force.
The troops arrived at the same time as democracy activists were screening tapes of the crackdown 8 years ago at Beijing's Tiananmen Square. The Chinese military is very much aware of its poor reputation. They've got new uniforms and they've learned a few phrases of English to spruce up their image. And across the border today, before they left, a top-ranking general told the soldiers they must respect Hong Kong's social system, love the people, and do everything according to law. And by agreement, the army will be largely confined to the barracks vacated by British troops. And if China keeps its pledge that the people of Hong Kong will run things here, today's deployment may be one of the few times China will show off its military muscle. Peter?
We'll have more on this historic day in just a moment, and yes, that is torrential rain out there at Glen. We'll do some reporting tonight on what this means in the rest of China, and we'll, of course, have some of the day's other news. The president's attempt to compromise with Republicans on taxes, and what boxing officials may do about Mike Tyson.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, brought to you by Toyota.
My partner. Right.
My reputation.
I deliver pizzas in it.
What?
I gotta count on a ladder all the time.
Toyota Corolla.
It's our first car together.
The ocean is always here.
What can you count on? In the past 29 years, over 23 million people answered.
My Corolla.
The 1997 Toyota Corolla, the most trusted car in the world.
Our Corolla.
It was the first night of our vacation. Between my aching back and all the excitement, I just couldn't get to sleep. My mind was racing. Should I take something? How would I feel in the morning? Well, I tried some Tylenol PM. That's the name I can trust. The Tylenol PM stopped my pain. It helped me sleep. Good decision. Next morning, we walked along the beach. Before breakfast. Pretty romantic.
Rest easy. It's Tylenol PM.
Now connoisseurs can savor two delicacies in one delicious serving. Introducing new Fancy Feast filet and pâté. Extraordinary. New Fancy Feast filet and pâté. Good taste is easy to recognize.
A callus makes you feel like you're walking on stones. Dr. Scholl's Advanced Pain Relief Callus Removers with Cushlan. Get rid of the pain by getting rid of the callus. We guarantee it. Try Dr. Scholl's Callus Removers with Cushlan today.
The return of Hong Kong to China is an event that affects vast numbers of people. On the Chinese mainland, of course, 6.5 million here in Hong Kong, and as many as 50 million Chinese elsewhere in the world who are affected at the very least emotionally. We get a touch of the Hong Kong feeling from ABC's Mark Lithke.
Peter, on a roof in the Central Business District, a group of artists marked the handover in a unique way. Couples who had never met were handcuffed to one another to symbolize Hong Kong and China learning to live together.
It's about people coming together, learning about each other's cultures.
Togetherness was the theme on the streets as well, even as the crowds grew thicker.
Crowds are happy, we are happy, everybody's happy.
When roads were closed for security reasons, celebrations moved underground.
In fact, the subways were kept running all night long to accommodate the biggest party in Hong Kong's history.
Among the travelers, a Hong Kong family that had returned from America just for the occasion.
We feel happy that Hong Kong go back to China because this is our land.
Back up above, families basked in the glow of their new pro-Chinese decorations. It was, for many here, a party more than 100 years in the making as they counted down to a new era. Red flags and Chinese costumes took center stage. The Union Jack was history. Some danced through the night, Some stayed glued to television screens. And for the night market vendors, it was a chance for a little extra profit. T-shirt salesman Tom Chu says he's full of pride, but even on an important night like this, he has to worry about business, which hasn't been so good lately. He hopes tomorrow will be a better day. Peter?
There are so many ways to judge how important this transfer of power was to people, but to the best of our knowledge, only in Beijing, the Chinese capital, was there a countdown clock. The Chinese have been preparing to return to Hong Kong for many years. This week, they were counting the minutes. ABC's Deborah Wong is there.
This was China's main event, a carefully stage-managed, made-for-TV extravaganza for 100,000 performers and invited guests on Tiananmen Square. The handover ceremony from Hong Kong was there to be seen on big screens, and all 100,000 counted down. Here, perhaps more than anywhere, they cheered the beginning of Chinese sovereignty, the end of what the Chinese call their long humiliation. This means the 100-year-old shame of our country is being washed away, says this student. It means the Chinese people are stronger. I'm so excited, says this young man. It's as if I'm seeing a loved one who has been away for so long. Throughout Beijing, there were smaller celebrations. Those not invited to the square watched the fireworks from the streets. Others celebrated quietly at home. For China, this has been a long road, says Sun Hucheng. Millions of Chinese people have been looking forward to this day.
Hong Kong's handover may be the best thing to happen to China in decades, a relatively poor country inheriting one of the world's wealthiest economies. And the Chinese government wants to make sure people know who to thank.
The handover has been the centerpiece of a relentless patriotic campaign, and there are those who say the government has gone overboard. To make this kind of loud propaganda every day, says journalist Dai Qing, has turned into a ridiculous situation. And the authorities have also tried to carefully manage the euphoria. When tens of thousands of uninvited guests came to Tiananmen Square, they were removed by police. The party didn't end until the Chinese flag went up over the square at dawn, and the Chinese people woke up to a country that is bigger than it was the day before. Deborah Wong, ABC News, Beijing.
Later in the broadcast tonight, we'll take you back to China. We were there on the weekend, and some of what we saw was, well, amazing. But in a moment, Forrest Sawyer in New York will have some of the day's other news.
Men, is gray hair sneaking up on you, right under your nose, making you look too old?
Whoa, it is sneaking up on me. Up here, too.
You need Just for Men gel, made for the hard-to-color gray of mustaches and sideburns. Simply brush in this no-drip gel, and in 5 minutes, rinse. Gray's gone. Your mustache and sideburns blend perfectly with your natural hair color.
That gray won't sneak up on me again.
Just for Men gel, the sure thing for a natural look.
When is heartburn worst for you?
After a rotten day at work.
After pizza, I really pay the price.
Zantac 75 works for me, no matter how bad my heartburn gets.
Zantac 75 starts working fast.
Faster than Pepsid AC.
Zantac 75 contains the #1 prescription acid-reducing medicine.
Zantac 75 is the smart choice.
For my worst heartburn.
Zantac 75, the final word in heartburn relief.
When I hear low prices on a can of paint, I say, wait a second. Paint isn't about price. Paint is health and beauty care for your house. My house, where my family lives, deserves the best. Professionals who do the paint thing tell you doing it right the first time costs less than doing it over. So use the best paint, Benjamin Moore, and get the best advice. A Benjamin Moore dealer. That's the best way to the best look.
Right now, save $5 a gallon on Benjamin Moore's best interior and exterior paint with mail-in rebate.
Good life, you've come so far, but you're still going, that's just the way you are. It's so exciting, it's so inviting, it's making whoopee another ride. There's so much room, another lovely afternoon. Don't need a reason, it's just a season for making whoopee. The brand new DeVille, for the time of your life.
Tonight on Nightline, it's not every day your flag, your military, and your government change without a shot being fired. But how long will the Chinese tolerate dissent? A day in the life of Hong Kong, followed by Politically Incorrect tonight.
Sports news tonight, boxing, of course. Mike Tyson today apologized for twice biting Evander Holyfield in Saturday night's heavyweight championship match. Tyson also said he would accept any penalty imposed on him and said simply, "I snapped." ABC's Armin Katayan is in Las Vegas.
A humbled Mike Tyson emerged from seclusion today to ask the world for forgiveness and to say he was seeking professional help.
I apologize to the world, to my family, and to the Nevada State Athletic Commission that has always treated me fairly. For an athlete in the heat of battle to suddenly lose it, it's not new, but it's not right. And for me, it doesn't change anything. I was wrong. And I expect to pay the price like a man. I had also reached out since Saturday to the medical profession for help to tell me why I did what I did.
Meanwhile, everyone is still talking about the most bizarre night in boxing history.
I saw the fight, and I was horrified by it. And I think the American people are.
The Nevada Athletic Commission meets tomorrow to decide whether to hold a hearing to discipline Tyson. Possible punishments include suspension and taking up to $3 million of Tyson's $30 million purse.
Tyson is just taking swipes at anybody in front of him.
Tyson's troubles extend beyond the ring. After the fight, he swung at 2 Las Vegas police officers. Those officers may file charges. If convicted, Tyson, still on probation for rape, could face a return to prison. Right now, that seems unlikely, but taking Tyson out of boxing through retirement or suspension would deprive this sport of his biggest draw. Tyson and the MGM Grand had been negotiating a new multi-fight, multi-million-dollar deal. In addition, Saturday's fight set an all-time pay-per-view purchase record. The 3 other top-grossing pay-per-view events were also Tyson fights, all of which puts those who want to punish him in a bind.
My cynicism brings me to believe that wherever there's big money, there's big forgiveness and there's big amnesia.
But it's doubtful anyone will ever forget the bite of the century. Armin Katayan, ABC News, Las Vegas.
Near Mexico City this morning, an empty passenger train slammed into a tanker truck loaded with natural gas, which then burned for a while and exploded. The truck driver was apparently trying to outrun the train at the crossing. He did jump out before it exploded. He was unhurt. There was a remarkable discovery from the Revolutionary War today in Lake Champlain between Vermont and New York. Divers have spotted a gunboat from a fleet commanded by Benedict Arnold before he turned traitor for the British. The ship is largely intact, complete with the cannon on its bow. We'll be back in just a moment.
1 minute Maalox.
The other night I woke up at about 1 a.m. with heartburn. Bad. So I tried this new Mylanta AR. I should have taken Maalox.
1 minute Maalox. You'll feel it cooling, coating right away. And clinical studies prove Maalox starts to work on stomach acid in about 1 minute, while Mylanta AR could take over 45 minutes.
In the middle of the night, I can't wait that long. I need something I know starts to work fast. I'll stick with 1 minute Maalox.
For heartburn or acid indigestion, count on 1 minute Maalox.
Looking for more space? Try the next Century. It's got the most interior space of any vehicle in its class. Because extra space is one luxurious touch that's appreciated by families everywhere. The all-new Century by Buick.
Discover a little luxury in the Century.
The good news about eggs is piling up. Recently, the results of 224 studies conducted among 8,000 participants over the past 25 years were compiled by researchers at the University of Arizona. The conclusion? If you're healthy, enjoy eggs along with a low-fat diet. Your cholesterol probably will stay about the same. To get all viewpoints about eggs and cholesterol, talk to your doctor. The incredible edible egg.
They call it the Blue Monster. This course is hard enough under perfect conditions. If my muscles are sore, forget it. So before I tee off, my doctor told me to take Advil.
Doctors recommend Advil for muscle pain. They like the way Advil works, right at the site of pain, stopping it where it starts.
For my sore muscles, nothing's better. It also works great on headaches.
Advanced medicine for pain.
In Washington today, some very public negotiations over taxes. Now that both houses of Congress have come up with their ideas for cutting $85 billion in taxes, President Clinton has weighed in with a compromise proposal. With details, our White House correspondent, John Donvan.
The president agrees with Congress on the need for a tax cut. The problem, he says, is where the House and Senate want those tax cuts to go.
They direct far too little relief to the middle class. They include time bomb tax cuts that threaten to explode the deficit.
The time bomb, says the president, is the cut in capital gains taxes that Congress proposes, lowering taxes that everyone pays on profits from investments from 28% to 20%. Mr. Clinton's capital gains cut would lower rates to about 20% for middle-income earners, but people in the top tax bracket would see almost no reduction. As for tax relief for the middle class, the president wants a tax credit of $500 per child to go to more families in lower income brackets than Congress does. His proposal would include families earning so little they pay no income taxes.
The president's proposals came out sounding non-negotiable. The Republicans quickly took potshots at some of them, but both sides say privately they are willing to compromise. Both sides clearly want to get this finished. John Donvan, ABC News at the White House.
More signs of a strong economy today. Sales of new homes rose 7.1% last month. Two other economic figures released today, only moderately higher. Personal income and consumer spending both gaining 0.3%. On Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrials lost nearly 15 points, closing at 76.72. On the NASDAQ market, stocks gained nearly 4 points. Once again, Peter Jennings on this historic day in Hong Kong. Peter?
For us, in just a moment, our weekend visit to mainland China, the adjacent province, and the future world that we saw there.
Trusting the wrong diarrhea medicine can put you in a very uncomfortable position. But you can count on Imodium AD to stop diarrhea, often in one dose. You could end up taking dose after dose after dose of the pink stuff to stop diarrhea as effectively as Imodium AD. Don't take chances with diarrhea.
You should have taken Imodium AD.
Take Imodium AD.
Sorry.
One dose relief you can count on.
Excuse me. Is that your Mercedes-Benz? Yeah, it is. Nice tie. Would you step away from the car, please? I was behind you back there, and you were going really slow. You some kind of cop? Something like that. Look, I'm going to have to write you up, driving a luxury car without enough horsepower.
Seville STS with a 300 horsepower Northstar system. More horsepower than any car in its class.
How many horsepower do I need? More than you got. Well, you know where I could get some?
This year, you will find something you never thought possible. It's big, really big. So ask your doctor about prescription Zyrtec. Or call toll-free to see how this prescription medicine may help you.
Just before our final story, a review of the lead, which of course has been the end of British rule here in Hong Kong. The British governor and Prince Charles have sailed out of Victoria Harbour, and the Chinese have now taken control. Convoys of their troops have crossed the frontier and are now taking up residence in their Hong Kong barracks. So finally this evening, how we spent our weekend. It's many years ago now since we first went to the frontier between Hong Kong and the Chinese mainland. There was a lot of tension in those days. Today you can get right into China by train in less than an hour. So we took the train to Shenzhen. And so did a lot of other people. A lot of other people. Thousands and thousands of Hong Kong Chinese do this all the time. They even go to buy groceries. It is cheaper in China than Hong Kong. And of course, this was a holiday weekend, time to visit relatives. We forgot about that. We have to say that in the customs hall, it was pretty clear we were on the communist side of the border. It was, don't sit here, don't stand there, don't read your paper here, wait here, okay. And you can come in to photograph, you just can't bring your camera, okay. Luckily, someone had a home video camera, and we got by with that for a while. Our very first reaction to Shenzhen was tough police, though generally they didn't notice us so much with a tourist camera, with this one exception.
I'm not doing anything. Okay.
Our second reaction to Shenzhen, wow. 10 years ago, this was a tiny fishing village, and look at it now. 1,400 miles from Beijing, this is the laboratory for China's experiment with capitalism. They built this whole place in a little over 10 years. It is rapidly becoming the largest manufacturing zone in the world. That and banking run from some of the most modern office buildings anywhere. And where did they get the money to do all this? It came through Hong Kong. Maybe this is why people think Hong Kong will change China instead of the other way around. You can buy almost anything here. We thought rather than miss anything, we'd buy a better video camera. 10 years ago in China, it didn't matter how much money you had, there was hardly anything to buy. Lunch. Another example of the changing China. The restaurant was privately owned by a Hong Kong man. People here can afford to eat out. There is so much poverty in parts of China that working in Shenzhen, though hard, has enormous rewards, including the cell phone. How does the Communist Party control information when so many people are able to share information? Just one last stop before we leave. It was the late Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping's idea, this whole business of Shenzhen. To get rich is glorious, he said. Good place for a picture. Nice one for the wallet. Very nice with the grandchild. Send this home to the wife, maybe. Great picture with the grandson. Not bad with the foreigner, either. That is our report on World News Tonight. It was quite a weekend. We'll be here again tomorrow as Hong Kong experiences its first full day of Chinese rule. Yes, that's thunder. We'll take a look at what this all means to the vital relationship between China and the United States. So I hope you'll join us. More on Nightline later this evening. I'm Peter Jennings. Good night from Hong Kong.
After a history-making day, what will tomorrow really bring for its people and you? Peter Jennings reports from Hong Kong on ABC's World News Tonight.
This has been a presentation of ABC News.
The truck burned for several minutes before it exploded in a massive fireball in a suburb of Mexico City. At least 6 people were hurt, 4 police officers and the truck driver and his passenger. Amazingly, all the train's passengers were safely evacuated.
June 30th. 1997.
The Chinese army is rolling in by the thousands. The British have beaten retreat. Many are celebrating the return of Hong Kong to the Chinese. But not everyone.
We want democracy and we want it now.
There's only 1 hour to go before I've been kicked out from the legislative building and replaced by the appointed legislature.
Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery.
Tonight, exit the Bulldog, enter the Dragon. A day in the life of the new Hong Kong.
This is ABC News Nightline. Substituting for Ted Koppel and reporting from Washington, Chris Wallace.
For Hong Kong, it has been a long night's journey into day, from the midnight transfer of power to the arrival by dawn of thousands of Chinese soldiers. And it has been one of those rare occasions when the spectacle has, if anything, understated the significance of the event. Now that Hong Kong has been handed over, the biggest possession left in a British empire that once ruled more than 800 million people is the island of Bermuda. As for Hong Kong, today is the first time we could recall when a free capitalist society has been taken over by a communist country without a shot being fired. That, of course, raises the key question tonight. What next for Hong Kong? Chinese leaders promise an arrangement they call one country, two systems. Hong Kong returns to the motherland, but with many of its political and economic freedoms supposedly protected. Now the world is watching to see whether China keeps that promise. ABC's Sheila McVicker has been out reporting for the last 24 hours on this remarkable day in the life of Hong Kong. And she's standing by now with the latest developments. Sheila?
Hong Kong's new chief executive, Tung Chee-hwa, concluded what amounts to his inaugural speech about 45 minutes ago. In that speech, he issued a subtle warning to those who might challenge the new regime.
We value plurality, but discourage open confrontation. We strive for liberty, but not at the expense of rule of law. We respect minority views, but are mindful of wider interests. We protect individual rights, but also shoulder collective responsibilities. I hope these values will provide the foundation for unity in our society.
His speech this morning culminates an extraordinary 24 hours in the extraordinary history of Hong Kong. The West may see this as the end of an era, but here in the East, this is now the first day of Hong Kong's future under China. Everybody, one way or another, is preparing for change. But here, people have different opinions about what that change means. In the hours immediately before and after the handover, we documented how people away from official ceremonies mark the event and what this change means to them. Patton left Government House for the last time, performing the traditional 3 turns of the driveway in his official car. Across town, a group of poets was meeting.
Use your soul to pay the price.
While this day is one of ceremony and celebration, 60% of the people here say they have concerns about the political future. Among them, people like Bai Ling, who was exiled from China after the Tiananmen massacre. He now publishes underground Chinese writers.
Definitely many things very soon happening. Everybody know, maybe in future magazine, if we publish, maybe have trouble, maybe no trouble. So we just want to, keep waiting what's happening. We open our eyes.
Now that the regime he fled has come to him, he has gathered fellow writers to mark the day in what they fear may be a last forum for their work.
97 also has people wishing June had 31 days. Fearing for the future.
As darkness fell and the official farewell ceremony got underway, countless celebrations began in Hong Kong. The food, the drink, the fireworks. All added to the crescendo towards midnight. It was a night when people of all backgrounds came out to express their hopes for the future of the new Hong Kong.
What I hope doesn't happen is like the repetition of '89, freedom of speech.
I spent about the first 28 years of my life in China. I think we've seen it all. So whatever is going to happen in the future, I think it could be only better than before.
But some of the most enthusiastic celebrations are outside the city of Hong Kong. Here in the new territories, closer to the Chinese border, families have lived in the same villages for 30 generations. And like the 1/3 of Hong Kong's population that have said in recent opinion polls that they are optimistic about their future under the Chinese, these people are pro-Chinese. Their family, cultural, and historical ties linked across the border. For them, this night marks the beginning of a reclaimed national identity. From here in the north, the Chinese city of Shenzhen is just a stone's throw away. The Chinese army troops deploying into Hong Kong have little more than a river to cross. Dr. Tang Siu-tong, a member of the new Chinese-appointed provisional legislature, has been waiting a long time for the return of his home to Chinese rule.
Well, I was born here. My family has been here for about 1,000 years. And for us, we feel very happy about it. At least we are going to rule our place ourselves.
The Tang clan remember the British as brutal oppressors. When the new territories were leased 99 years ago, the people here fought the British and lost more than 200 fighters. Their dead are still mourned today at what they call Heroes' Tomb. In the final hours before the handover, almost 2,000 villagers gathered in Wan Toi Shan for the biggest party in living memory. There were lions for luck, and hours before midnight, the Chinese flag already flew. Chris Tang's family has lived here for 22 generations. As we walked through the village, he talked about how proud he was to finally be a part of China.
When the Hong Kong government, the whole government become a Chinese, it will be easier to do anything.
Hello, I'm Sheila. At home, like most of Hong Kong, Chris's brother was watching the official ceremony on TV. We are losing something we are very familiar with, says Tang Wah-ming. We are not sure what is coming. What they are not sure of is the Chinese army. As the advance guard entered Hong Kong, Chris's generation remembers the Tiananmen massacre. But for his parents, that massacre never happened. Beijing has their full support. But back in central Hong Kong, democracy activists called Beijing's decision to send more than 4,000 troops here stupid because of the memories it would evoke.
It really may remind the world to remember what happened in June 489, to remind people of Hong Kong what happened in June 489, and to frighten Hong Kong people.
Han Dongfeng and other pro-democracy activists gathered in increasing numbers as the night progressed outside the Legislative Council, known here as LegCo.
We want democracy and we want it now.
These were their last hours as democratically elected representatives. At the stroke of midnight, their mandate would be annulled and their places then taken by Chinese appointees. Inside the LegCo building, outgoing legislators like Andrew Chung gathered to prepare for their exit.
We would like to go in a very decent way, and we will fight back in 1998.
In deliberate contrast to the official celebrations, they kept the mood somber. In telephone interviews with international media, they drove home their fear. This could be the end of democracy in Hong Kong.
Yes. And there's only 1 hour to go before I've been kicked out from the LegCo building and replaced by the appointed legislature.
Midnight, however, would not be the end of their struggle. Chung and others feverishly prepared for a defiant post-midnight speech from the balcony above the crowd. It's 11 minutes to 12. In 10 minutes, the British flag comes down for the last time. And here in the legislative building, there isn't even a television set turned on so that legislators like Andrew Chung, who are about to lose their jobs, can watch what's happening. As the British flag started to lower, Andrew Chung was arguing with a group of journalists, oblivious to the time. And back in the new territories, 2,000 jubilant people in a sports stadium joined in as an American-style electronic scoreboard ticked off the seconds to the end of British rule and the beginning of Chinese rule.
As the clock struck 12, it was a remarkably seamless transition, and Hong Kong was back in China's hands. Part 2 of Sheila McVicker's report on this historic day when we come back.
For the first time, the Chinese flag flew over Hong Kong, and in those first minutes, all the trappings of the British Empire were taken away. Crests from buildings, the royal insignia, replaced with the Red Star of China. Policemen wore new badges, symbolizing the authority of China. And for the first time, a Chinese leader addressed the people of Hong Kong from the territory he now ruled. Jiang Zemin, China's president, promised the people here would keep their hard-won freedoms.
The Chinese government will unswervingly implement the basic policies of one country, two systems, Hong Kong people administering Hong Kong, and a high degree of autonomy.
Long live democracy! Long live democracy!
Democratic Party leader Martin Lee lost his place in government tonight, as the Chinese hand-picked legislature replaced the old Legislative Council. But he stayed on the LegCo balcony past midnight to pledge that the fight would continue and to hold the Chinese to their promises. But there is one promise he already doubts, that elections planned for next May would be free and fair.
We are not confident that there would be fair elections at all.
As the new chief executive of Hong Kong and his appointed provisional legislature were sworn in, U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright was noticeably absent in a show of official U.S. displeasure against the loss of democratic rights. But it was a message tempered with realism. Her diplomatic representative remained in the room. It was about that time that Andrew Chung, stripped of his place as a democratically elected legislator, left his offices for the last time.
Because I will fight back, I will be re-elected and be the representative of Hong Kong people again.
Mrs. Albright, you know, the decision that was reached was that she would leave the ceremony tonight, right about now.
Yeah.
Right about now, just as the provisional legislature is being sworn in.
Yeah.
That she would leave, but the U.S. Consul General would stay here.
Yeah.
What do you think about that arrangement?
I think I'm very upset about this arrangement because the U.S. government certainly softened stance.
Among those sworn in tonight as Chinese-appointed legislators was Dr. Tang Siew-tung of the New Territories. He, too, was disappointed by the U.S., but said their presence was not enough.
I don't know what the U.S. government is thinking, really. He sent a counselor over, but not the Secretary of State.
Well before 4 a.m., the streets were empty, the motorcades had passed, and the first hours of Chinese rule ticked away quietly. By sunrise, the center of Hong Kong was still quiet. But up in the northern New Territories, crowds were gathering to welcome the 4,000 Chinese army troops and armored vehicles crossing over the border. People got their children out of bed, and hundreds stood in torrential rains for a glimpse of their new army.
Because we are Chinese, that's most important, right?
Happy, huh? Very happy.
And when the Chinese troops did arrive in the New Territories border town of Shengshui, they were impassive and stone-faced, lashed by wind and rain. Down this road at 6:15 this morning, 174 vehicles carried 1,300 Chinese soldiers. And those waiting on the curbside cheered and waved. This morning, Tung Chee-hwa, the new chief executive, gave his inaugural speech. In Hong Kong, polls show he is already less popular than the British governor who left last night. But the celebrations and ceremonies continue here in the East, where July 1st marks a new beginning. For Nightline, this is Sheila McVicker in Hong Kong.
Today was not just another day in China's capital either. We'll go to Beijing. Self-image. ABC's Deborah Wong has been covering that part of the story from Beijing. Deborah?
Well, Chris, it's a holiday here in China in honor of the handover, so there's lots of people again here on Tiananmen Square in Beijing. Work crews are taking away some of the debris and some of the props from last night's big event. Many people here say that this has been one of the most important celebrations to take place here since Mao Zedong declared the founding of the People's Republic of China nearly 50 years ago. The last time Tiananmen Square was in the world's eye, this was the scene, the crushing of the pro-democracy movement in 1989. Last night, the world was watching again, but it couldn't have been more different. There was nothing solemn, nothing mournful about the way the Chinese marked this historic event. Tiananmen Square was one big party for 100,000 people, all of them invited guests. As the handover approached, people's attention turned to the huge TV screens around the square, and with the clock counting down the seconds to midnight, they all counted with it. While some were shedding tears in Hong Kong, in Beijing, there was nothing of the sort. After many years of drifting, Hong Kong is finally coming back to the motherland, says this young girl. Every Chinese person who loves the country will feel excited. The sentiments were the same all over the city, where people watched the fireworks from their rooftops and from the streets. This man says he brought his whole family from the provinces just to see the excitement. There were similar scenes from around the country. Chinese TV broadcast the historic events from Nanjing, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, and elsewhere. The celebrations for Hong Kong's return have actually been going on for weeks. The government is using the occasion to encourage patriotism and support for the Communist Party. Some Beijing intellectuals, such as Dai Qing, believe the state-sponsored festivities have gone too far.
The purpose is to cheer people up, and people will say our Communist Party is good and our China is good. It's to give them optimism, to cover up the problems of the nation and of a government that's actually in great turmoil.
And she suggested the money spent would better benefit China's people. Nonetheless, the party continued on with a special flag raising over Tiananmen Square at dawn. And residents of Beijing woke up to a China with a different sense of self, of pride. They watched the images of their country asserting its sovereignty over its newly acquired territory and began to ask the question, what will Hong Kong mean for China?
Deborah joins us again from Beijing, and Sheila McVicker is standing by in Hong Kong. Deborah, let's start with that striking image of those Chinese troops rolling into Hong Kong. Are Chinese leaders insensitive to the message that sends to the world, or is that precisely the message they want to send?
I'm not sure that's the message they want to send to the rest of the world. I think it's probably the message they want to send to their own people. In a lot of ways, the government here is still caught in many of the trappings of this, old communist system, and to them, marching out in the streets with soldiers and weaponry and parading themselves is a way to show authority and strength and pride, and that's been the case for the last 50 years in China. So for them, this is a way to show their own people that China is now in charge of Hong Kong, and it's probably an unfortunate result, but the message they needed to send was to their domestic audience.
Sheila McVicker, how far do you sense that pro-democracy demonstrators and newspapers are prepared to go to test the limits of Chinese control?
There's a clear difference between the pro-democracy activists and the newspapers. The newspapers are owned by businessmen. Anecdotally, there's been enough evidence over the last few days and even weeks of self-censorship on the part of some of the papers here, papers that in the past have been very strong in their support of the democracy activists. The democracy activists are well-funded, they're very committed, they're looking forward to May 1998, that's the promised election date, and they say that they will hold the feet of this new government and Mr. Tang Chi-wa to the fire until they get what they want, which is free and fair elections.
Let me ask you about that. What are the first signs that those demonstrators will be looking at to see whether or not China is going to keep its promise?
Well, there already have been some rules established for how these elections should go forward. And it's quite clear that the democracy activists are not happy with them. They are nowhere near as broad-based or broad-scoped as the last elections, which brought these people into political power and gave them elected seats in the legislature. What they say the Chinese government is seeking to do is to restrict them, to reduce their numbers. The last time out, the democracy activists won a large majority of the vote here. And what they suspect is that the Chinese government doesn't want a repeat of that.
Deborah, we've got about 30 seconds left. For all the talk about China's influence on Hong Kong, how much concern there in Beijing about Hong Kong's influence on China?
I think there's probably a lot of concern because over the past 15 years, ever since reform started here, Hong Kong has been a model for China in terms of economic reform. The initial lessons that China wanted to take from Hong Kong, free markets, for example, they didn't want to import all the other extraneous sort of bourgeois influences from Hong Kong, but they came anyway. I think there's some hope among more progressive thinking people here that along with Hong Kong, perhaps Chinese leaders will learn more about freedom, more about democracy, and some of these influences might creep into China.
Deborah Wang in Beijing, Sheila McVicker in Hong Kong, thank you both very much for your extraordinary hard work over these past 24 hours. And I'll be back in a moment.
Hurry to Sears, where all tires are on sale. All sizes, all brands.
Roll me
roll me west.
Sears Auto Center. Sale ends Saturday.
At Ford Motor Company, we're experimenting with a backing up warning system, which sends a signal to help you avoid hitting what you can't even see. Sometimes you just have to go backwards to go forward. Ford, quality is job one.
Hey, the road ahead awaits you.
Hurry to Sears, where all tires are on sale. All sizes, all brands.
Roll me east, roll me west.
Sears Auto Center. Sale ends Saturday.
The average car travels 12,000 miles a year. The average tires last 40,000 miles. The conclusion? Sooner or later, you're going to need a new set of wheels. Where do you go? I'm getting to that. A place with thousands of tires and the best brands rolling. People with diplomas in tireology and floors your grandmother could kiss. Oh yeah, and they serve a great cup of joe. NTV, National Tire and Battery. We're everything you want, nothing like you'd expect.
Ole, 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 ole. Toyota! Toyota's hot, hot, hot.
The hottest party is back with hot Toyotas and hotter deals.
Toyota's hot, hot, hot.
Get into a smoking new well-equipped Corolla lease and pay just $159 a month. $159 a month. Or buy Corolla and save more with incentives. Is it hot out here? Or is it just us? You've been waiting? The hottest sales event is here at Toyota now.
Tuesday is boxer Mike Tyson's day of reckoning with the Nevada Athletic Commission following his biting incident. Tomorrow, Good Morning America talks with Evander Holyfield's attorney. And that's our report for tonight. I'm Chris Wallace in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
Nightline has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source. ABC News, now always on.
Spin City's Paul. Home Improvement's Al. Twins separated at birth. Both are a couple of smooth operators with the women. And get... I'm sorry. Both a couple of hot swinging guys. I'm just doing a little rapping in the hood. Twins or just two hip dudes? I'm usually very hip. You decide. ABC Tuesday.
I've been promoting the show, the movie for a couple of weeks.
Political satire stuff.
Absolutely, you got to get in. It's my own personal comment there. I've just been promoting this thing so heavily in the last couple of weeks. I began to realize that the hard sell is the best way.
That's the best way.
You don't mind me using this show to promote Ace Ventura, Pet Detective?
No.
When Nature Calls.
Yeah.
Well, coming November 10th. It's a little twist on the old Carol Burnett thing.
Yeah, that's quite a twist, really. Well, let me ask you about doing these promotional things, because I know the last week you're just bopping around the same questions. The reporters, do they ask you the same questions day after day, or literally 10 times a day?
You do. You get a lot of the same questions over and over again, but I don't mind, as long as I can keep my answers changing and different all the time.
Oh, just give a different answer?
Yeah, absolutely. You just keep changing them, keep it interesting for yourself. For instance...
you want me to ask you a question?
Yeah, one that I get all the time is, ask me if I like working with the animals.
Oh, okay. Now, do you like working with the animals? Is that fun?
Yes, I do. Especially the monkeys. They're wonderfully unpredictable. Okay, now ask me again. Same question completely.
Do you like working with the animals? Is that fun?
That is the stupidest question I've ever heard. If I didn't like working with the animals, you think I would tell you? Right. Get real, bloodsucker. You know, so see, it's basically the same answer, but I've changed the phrasing to keep it interesting.
Right.
Ask me again.
Do you like working?
What do you want from me? Yes! 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 I like working with the animals! Oh, yeah! You people would love to turn it into something filthy, wouldn't you? Huh? Well, I'm not going to let you. Okay, ask me one more time, Jake. That might go too far. That's too much. Now.
Yeah.
But I could answer the same question
But I
all
can
day,
see how that would change things.
Yeah.
Now, the other day, a big honor here in town. You had your hands and feet in the cement at the Chinese theater down there. That's going to be a
thank you. Yeah, that truly was a great honor. It was really wonderful, and I just, it's not the first time I've done it, of course. I've done it before. The only difference is those times I was chased away by a guy in a hard hat. So.
Oh, I see, yeah.
But, no, I just thought it was amazing, and I really had to, pinch myself, say, hey, keep your feet on the ground, Fortunately, they were in cement.
Right.
So, no, but it was just, I don't like to think of myself as like that kind of thing, the star thing or whatever, but I wear it well.
Really?
I'm not any different than anybody else.
Yeah.
I wake up in the morning, I brush my teeth, I comb my hair, I walk into my germ-free biospheric exercise chamber, and I work out until the voices go away.
Really?
Just like every other Joe. In fact, I was talking about the concept of, staying connected and staying real with my food taster the other day.
Really?
And I think he was about to give me a huge compliment, and he just keeled over. So now I gotta replace him and the chef. So don't tell me I don't have problems, man.
My favorite thing at the ceremony, they had a guy there who was sort of narrating, because you weren't mic'd.
Right.
So you would...
I really don't need it.
No, but there's a lot of people.
Broadway type guy.
There were like 1,000 people there, and he was translating your act for the crowd, that guy that would... like when you would say aces, he would go, he said aces, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, that was nice. That was nice. He never let it slip, Just for the stupid people, Everything comes twice. I loved it.
Now, I noticed you put a catchphrase in the cement. Now, what was the significance of that? Does everybody that does that? Is that a big...
Well, that's the thing. The pressure is so hard. I mean, it's going to be there forever. It's Hollywood history, and you just feel like, man, I better say something profound, or I'm going to be a fool out there. And so I went through a bunch of different ones. I practiced. I got cement, and I practiced. And
I think do we have them here?
Yeah, I brought some pictures of them. I actually listed them for myself too. Okay. And these are the few of the tries that I didn't actually use. But,
okay, let's take a look.
But there's some of the things. The first one was, this is really exciting. Next. And I just thought that was too disrespectful.
Yeah, it might be a little. Yeah.
Another one I wanted to do was Love and Kisses, Jack Klugman.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. In West Hollywood, I could never bend over like this. But again, then you're pitting, two towns against each other, and I'm not into that, So you don't want to see hair and stuff like, Another one is, next one was, for a good time, place breasts firmly into my handprint. Here's a good one. Yeah. Hey, OJ, I think I found your knife. And the last sort of one I didn't use is, if your feet are this size, congratulations on your penis. Oh, wow. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh. Now, what was the real thing?
I broke my water.
Oh, you can have my water.
Can I?
Water. Yes, I have my water.
This is a healthy thing to do in the 90s.
Yeah,
let's share.
Why don't you take the water now, really? Take the whole thing.
That's how I do it.
Yeah,
That's how I do it.
Now, what did you really write? What was the real thing? Was it...
Merrily, 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 ...
Oh,
because basically that's my philosophy of life. I think it's a really profound song. You know, people don't think about it, but it's quite Buddhist. You know, when you think about it. Well, yeah, I mean, just the center of the wheel, gently down the stream. You know, just life is but a dream, and that's really the truth of it. It is a dream. You know, if it absolutely. Hey, I'll tell you what. If it wasn't, do you think I could do this?
We'll take a break. When we come back, let's find out about your home life. We'll discuss your home life and what you do and the slippers and the pipe by the fire and more with Jim right after this. Don't go away. Jim which opens tomorrow. Yes. We know about Jim, the actor, the